Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Burns. I'm the director of Age Friendly Boston, which is an initiative within the City of Boston's Age Strong Commission. Thank you so much for joining us for celebrating what unites us. I really hope that everyone is continuing to be well and healthy. Celebrating What Unites Us is a partnership of our commission, the Armenian Heritage Park on the Greenway, and Oldways, a nonprofit inspiring people to embrace the traditional food of our ancestors. I'd like to introduce Michelle Tashjian, who is the president and the board of trustees of the Armenian Museum of America in Watertown, who will introduce Lena Tashjian. Michelle is executive vice president, Distributor Corporation of America. She and Bob Kadarian are benefactors of the Armenian Heritage Park on the Greenway. It was an initiative of the museum to collect recipes that introduced us to Lena. So please join me in welcoming Michelle, and then we will get our regular program started. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you, Andrea. It really is my pleasure to have been asked to introduce Lena to today. And before I do that, though, I would like to give you a little background on this amazing and talented young lady and how I was introduced to her. I first became aware of Lena during a meeting with our collections and museum operations manager, Zoe Quinn, and I were having a meeting with Armenian Hovanessian and Rosalind Manassian, founders of New Paths, Bridging Armenian Women. And this was literally days before the outbreak of COVID. We were planning an event for women entrepreneurs that was to be held at the museum in May. And sadly, we had to cancel it, of course. But that's when we learned of an upcoming book signing that was going to be held at the Bicar building, and it was organized by New Paths, and they had asked us to attend. And unfortunately, I had a prior commitment that night, but Zoe was able to go, and being a vegetarian, she was thrilled. And I suggested that she ask Lena if she would consider selling her book through the museum's gift shop. And she graciously said yes. And so we're very proud to have her book in our gift shop. And honestly, I'll tell you a little quick story before I tell you about Lena. But we have the book, which is beautiful, and it's displayed on our bookshelf on the street side. So we get it gets a lot of visibility and a lot of attention. And it's bright and beautiful, and the illustrations are fabulous. But the recipe idea to share your family recipes came during the museum's closing while restaurants were also still closed to the public. So we thought it would be a great chance for our members and followers to share their family recipes from various Armenian villages. And to kick off this initiative, we featured a recipe from Lena's cookbook for vegan dolma, which sparked so much interest in her book. In fact, now that our online platform is back up and running, we have already received orders for her book. So I'm very excited about that for you, Lena. And I must say, when I first saw her book, Vegan Armenian Kitchen, and as I said, it's beautifully illustrated and the recipes are great. It just includes recipes and stories from Armenia and Armenian diaspora. I was so impressed and so proud of her achievement as an Armenian lady, and to have it amongst our books in our gift shop. But when the best Armenian cooks are singing Lena's praises, that speaks volumes about her cookbook, an exceptional resource for Armenian cuisine and introduction to Armenia's rich culture and heritage. I'll tell you a little bit about Lena. Lena has lived and traveled throughout Armenia. She was in Armenia through Birthright Armenia 10 years ago and ended up spending 6 years there, volunteering first for Green Lane, an agricultural assistance non-governmental organization, NGO, through Birthright, and then working for the same NGO and learning about farms and foods through them. She has written for various local and international publications on food, nutrition, travel, and culture. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Lena Tashjian.
Hi everyone, thank you so much, Michelle, for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to meet you virtually, hopefully in person
Yes.
soon as well. And thank you to everyone who's here, and of course, thank you to Age Friendly Boston, Armenian Heritage Park, and Oldways. I'm so happy to be part of this initiative. So I guess we get started with the recipes.
Sure.
All right.
That's great.
So the first recipe I'm going to be making is a salad, and the timing works really well because it needs to sit and let the flavors combine for about 15 to 20 minutes once it's all mixed in. So it'll give us just enough time to make the second recipe. So the salad is called walnut and olive salad in the most simplistic form, but it's also referred to as kovivi jash, which translates to shepherd's dinner. And the reason for that is because the region in which it's from, Musalet, is a very mountainous region in which olives and walnuts are found in abundance, so it's found to be a very accessible and convenient meal for shepherds who are working the land. So lucky for us, it's also very delicious and quite unique, so I hope you will enjoy it and I hope you all make it as well. So very simple ingredients, and then the star ingredient I will leave to the last because I want to talk a little bit about it. So first things first is just half a small onion, so just about this size, and I'm just going to, it doesn't have to be finely chopped, I'm just going to, maybe I'll move this in case you want to see, just roughly chopped, so no one gets a massive chunk of onion, but it doesn't need to be fine. So just like that, adding that to my bowl. And next up is, I would say, the main ingredient, which is about 1.5 cups of green olives. So they just need to be pitted. You can pit them yourself or buy them pitted, and you can roughly chop them. So I like to keep them pretty large, and I've seen people also keep them whole, which I think looks very beautiful in photos. You can also buy them sliced if that's more convenient. So about 1.5 cups of green olives. And then half a cup of crushed walnuts. And again, with this recipe, what's really great is you don't need anything like a food processor. You don't need to make it a powder, just very roughly chopped. So I literally put it in a bag, take my big wooden spoon and smack it until it's roughly crushed, which is why I don't want to do that on camera. I want to spare you all that horrible sound. So then those are the 3 main ingredients. And now this is completely optional. You want to add a green. So I'm going to put about a couple tablespoons of parsley. And if you don't like parsley, feel free to sub it with something else, a different fruit, or you can omit it altogether. So again, just very casual chopping. No, it's not tabulet. We don't have to make it very fine. So just like this. And it gives a really nice color. So I do like to include it. And I like parsley personally. So it gives a nice flavor. Just something more like that. All right, I'm going to add that in. And now to the fun stuff, which is the dressing. Okay, and I'll give this a stir. I have my fancy spoon for the salad. So I just give the dry ingredients a nice stir. Okay, so next up is tomato paste. And if you don't have tomato paste and have pepper paste, you can use that instead, and it'll provide a little bit of a kick. So you just want to put in a generous tablespoon. And then, even though there's olives in there, you do want to add some olive oil, so a couple tablespoons. So I'm just going to drizzle it like that. I don't add salt because the salt from the olives tends to be enough, but feel free to taste and adjust when you're making it. You put that away, and then you can give this a stir as well. I always say this is such a good salad to make during the holidays because of the red and the green. It's very Christmassy. Okay, so I give this a stir. And last but definitely not least, and to me this is the star ingredient, and you'll see that I'm excited about it because it's officially beginning to become pomegranate season. And I'm very excited to include it. So in this recipe, you usually just use pomegranate molasses, but pomegranates are so beautiful. I peeled it off screen so I wouldn't get it all over my apron. So I went ahead and peeled one, and I tend to include a couple in there for a crunch, but I actually use them more for decoration. It's beautiful. It goes with the theme, obviously, because there's pomegranate molasses. And pomegranates are very meaningful in Armenian cuisine. They represent abundance, fertility, good fortune. And the idea is that from one fruit comes so much. So I always like to use it in cooking whenever possible and kind of, I don't know, be a little bit more intentional with cooking and think about the symbolism. So it's about a tablespoon of pomegranate molasses. You can also use syrup. They're just a little bit different in terms of consistency. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon. I always put more, but I'm trying to be a little bit calmer. So you put that in there, give that another good stir. And no spices necessary. You'll see why after you try it. So yeah, I really like the way it looks with the larger olives. I'll plate it nicely later and I can show you. And then you can always top it with some more fresh parsley and of course the pomegranate arils. Oh, I can already smell the mixture of the tomato paste and the pomegranate molasses. All right, so as I said, it's perfect timing because now this can sit for about 15 to 20 minutes and then it will be perfect. All the flavors will have a chance to combine. So if you're gonna make this, I would just mention to make it you can even make it a couple of hours early and just set it aside. So now that the salad is done, I'm just put that away. We'll get started on Jingalov, which I guess is the main of this cooking show. So Jingalov essentially is a stuffed flatbread and it's stuffed with greens and herbs. It's typically made in the spring and fall because that's when the herbs that are typically used are bountiful and plenty. So I learned how to make it in both Artsakh and Armenia, and I was very curious about it because it is, oh sorry, I should mention, both the dishes I'm making are plant-based in the sense that I'm not veganizing them. They're actually naturally plant-based. So as a vegan in Armenia, I was very, very intrigued by this naturally vegan dish that was offered to me in Artsakh and Armenia. So depending on who you speak to, there can be anywhere from 5 to 40 herbs and greens in there, which to me was always like an exaggeration. I was like, no way there could be 40. But when I actually saw it being made and saw all these women coming with baskets of all these greens, half of which I couldn't even recognize, I understood that if it's made by the right person at the right time, there tends to be, if not 40, close to 40 herbs and greens. So my recipe is much more modest than that. I'm using about 5 everyday greens, and besides the 2 main ones, which I would argue are dill and spring onion, a lot of them are customizable. So I know lots of people, for example, hate cilantro. You can easily customize it. When I was learning from it, the woman who was showing me kept saying, she kept saying it's a recipe-less dish, but there's a couple of rules. So I'll go through that. I'll try to impart her wisdom as I make it. But yeah, feel free to customize it. Last week, for example, I had a lot of beet greens. I threw those in there. I've used carrot tops too, the greens. They're quite nutritious as well. So feel free to customize as you see fit. So I'm gonna need my cutting board. I've done most of the chopping before, but I'm going to go through the greens that I'm using. So you can see already why it's referred to as forest bread. So there's a bunch of stuff in here, and then I'm going to highlight the specific greens that I'm using. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I just had literally 3 leaves of Swiss chard, so I thought I would throw that in there too. So similar as the salad with the parsley, this is not something you have to finely chop. In fact, it's nice when some of the greens retain a little bit of their crunch. So it's not a lot of prep work, it's just chopping. So normally I would put on a good CD or I guess my iPod and then just get to chopping. So I'm gonna start with what I would consider to be the main ingredient. No matter where I had Jingalov, including in Los Angeles in America, dill was always the kind of prominent flavor. So I feel like whatever you do, there should be double the amount of dill. So you can put as many greens as you want, but dill should be the main flavor. If you don't like dill, obviously omit it and you can just replace it with something else. But I'm just saying traditionally that seems to be the main flavor. So just roughly chopping with the dill, I just take the main large stems out. Those are too large, but I leave the thin ones because I don't mind that in the bread. And it gives a nice crunch. So just roughly chopping. So in my recipe, I'm using 2 bunches of dill. And what I always do is I wash the greens in advance so that they have time to completely dry, so it's easy to chop and work with. So that's really the only prep work I would recommend doing. Okay. Next up is parsley. And again, same thing, I would do about a bunch and just roughly chopping, and you can see that I'm leaving some of the larger stems. So I just take out the bottom ones that are very thick and have no leaves on them. So let me just push that around. Okay, throwing that in there. My bowl is smelling very good. Next up, and this is another one that should be not the main ingredient like dill, the second main ingredient, and that's spring onion. So when they're thick like this, I just use 1 big bunch, but I tend to double that too. And I usually split them in half, not so they have to be chopped finely, but just so they can be spread out evenly, and every bite should have a little bit of this spring or green onion. So again, so I'll cut them in half just so it's easier to chop. Same thing. So going into the bowl. And cilantro, which I know is one of them that lots of people dislike. And I think that it tastes like soap to some people. That's where the dislike comes from. I love it, so I'm including it, but of course, if you don't like it, don't think that you can't make the recipe. Just swap it or put more of another green that you already enjoy. So, just roughly chopping that again. Okay, adding that in. And lastly, this is my favorite way to use up a lot of spinach. Spinach to me is a very mild flavor, and in this it doesn't really, in terms of flavor, it doesn't add much, but you can basically eat your greens as much as possible by throwing in large amounts of a neutral tasting green. So I tend to always have spinach on hand, so whenever I'm making this, I'll put almost like a container in there. In this case, I'm probably using about, what's in there is about 4 cups packed. And just again, roughly chop. If you're going to use a tougher green like kale, I would advise maybe massaging it a little bit separately so it's not as chewy as it normally is. All right, roughly chopped. And finally, my 3 little leaves of Swiss chard. I really like adding this. I just don't always have it on hand because of the color. I love the purple in there when you're eating it and you can see it through the bread. So I definitely would recommend adding more of this. So obviously 3 leaves will take me 1 second hopefully to chop. Yep. So it's a good way to use up anything you may have lying around, so you can throw it in there. I've just been told that the only thing you shouldn't add, and that was one of the rules, was thyme. I assume it's because it's a little bit bitter, but Husky, who I learned it from, was just always like, do anything you want, do not add thyme. So I'm going to pass on her wisdom to all of you. All right, and now, very simple additional ingredients. So you want to put a generous amount of salt. And you don't want to massage it or anything. You want the greens to retain some of the crunch. So salt. I always add, this is optional, of course, red pepper. And finally, black pepper. All right. And again, olive oil. Not too much, just a few swirls like that. And then you just stir it. I have my big spoon handy. Just give it a nice stir. It already smells so lovely, and just the smell alone makes me realize like Jingalov is coming because it's such a recognizable smell when everything's mixed together. So just mix it all together. It's nice and fluffy. As you can see, it's not wilted down. All right. That looks and smells good. I'm going to put that aside. I'll work on the dough, and then while the dough is sitting just for a couple of minutes, I'll plate the salad so everything's ready at the same time. And if there's time, I'm going to make a drink that goes really, really well with this. And it's kind of another rule that you're supposed to have it with this drink, but I'll save that if we get time. So the bread is extremely simple, and it's one of the reasons I love this dish. Because it's a flatbread, there's no yeast, so you don't have to wait for anything to rise, which is a good way to, it's a good bread to keep in mind when you have to make, if people come over and you don't really have something, you can whip this up very easily. So as long as you have greens, it's a very simple dish to make. So this is about 3 cups and a third of flour. I'm going to add a generous amount of salt. It's 3 ingredients, so I'm just going to whisk that together, make a little bit of a well. Okay. Well, I'll use a fork. I can never make making dough look nice, so I apologize in advance if it's going to get very messy. That's why I have my apron on. So just make that a little well, and it's about 1 cup and a third of water. It should be a little bit warm, and you're just going to add it gradually, stir, and that's it. Those are the 3 ingredients. Doesn't need to set, doesn't need to rise. So just keep stirring. It's going to be a soft dough. And then we'll just use some flour at the end to roll it out. Okay. away. Right, sleeves up because we're gonna get to kneading. It's very light kneading, so if you're not accustomed to making bread, this is one of the easier recipes. It just, oops, see? Well, I can use that for flat surface. So just mix as much as you can before you get your hands involved, just to avoid having too much dough stuck to your hands. All right. Get started. So I'm just going to knead it in the bowl. I hope, if you're curious about this, I hope you can see. Just keep going.
Lena, may we ask you a few questions from the audience?
Yeah, sure. Kneading is a perfect time because I'm going to be doing this for a few minutes.
Someone wants to know, could you use almond flour in this recipe?
I've never done it. That's to make it gluten-free, right? I've never done it, but it's going to be very thin. So as long as you can roll almond flour out quite thin, I think it'd be fine because the dough is not really the spotlight. It's supposed to be so thin that the greens show. So as long as you can roll it out, I would definitely say go for it. I've just never done that. So definitely experiment, yeah.
Great. Would you avoid using arugula or other bitter greens in this? Or?
I would use arugula. I love arugula. I think arugula, even though it has a touch of bitterness, it's not like as intense as thyme. So I would add some. You can maybe start with just half a bunch just to see how the flavor is, and you can always taste it and adjust. So I would personally include that for sure. I love arugula. Good choice. I should do that next time.
Great. And could you tell us more about the red pepper that you used? Was it Aleppo or cayenne?
Sure. So it's in a little Armenian container that has pomegranates on, if you can't already tell I'm obsessed, but it is Aleppo red pepper. It's a little bit spicy, but it's definitely not as spicy as like crushed red pepper. So I don't know if I can, it's just like the powdered one. I like it for the flavor more than the spice. If you want spicy, I've taken either serrano or jalapeno and very thinly sliced it, and that one I do fine, so it's just not overwhelming in one bite. That's a really nice way to add some spice if you want to go that route.
Great. And one more question, how do you store the herbs before you use them in this recipe?
So I always, when I know I'm making Jingalov huts, I wash them the night before, so I rinse them out really well in a bowl. And I would really recommend, especially with dill, because it will hold up so much sand. So when you kind of soak it, all the sand, the dust, everything will come to the bottom. So I do that all with every single grain. And then I put it in a colander and let it sit until the water stops dripping out. Once that's done, I put just either a towel or a paper towel, a large one, place all the greens on it, let them dry out. And then if I want to store them, I roll it in the towel and put it in the fridge. And that way they stay crispy and you're not going to get soggy and they won't actually dry out.
Great. And we have one more question that just came in. Could you tell us where we could find that red pepper that you used?
I'm assuming you're based in the US?
I believe so, this person.
I'm trying to think, when I was in the US, I can't think of a store right now because when I was in LA, for example, and I went shopping there to, I think it was called King's Market, and they had all the spices, but I would go to any Armenian, Middle Eastern shop, they will 100% have it. It might be called different things, but it's red pepper flakes, essentially. So it could even be like an Italian shop, actually, I should have mentioned that. So online, I don't shop spices online, but I'm sure there's lots of options too. But yeah, any Middle Eastern or Armenian store will definitely have it. It's going to be called red pepper flakes or Aleppo pepper flakes, something like that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the dough is almost done. Little morning workout. Maybe I should put this there. All right, so as I said, it's a soft dough, but obviously it shouldn't be sticky. So just going over it a little bit more, and then I'll just roll it into a ball, leave it into the bowl until I'm done plating the salad. Okay. There's a little bit more flour in there. I'm just going to leave it kind of dusting it. All right. I was originally going to make the dough off camera, but then I thought I wouldn't be making anything on, so I think it's a nice thing to show. All right, so just roll it up into a ball. Leave it in there. You can cover it if you're going to, I got some cilantro in there. You can cover it up if you're going to take a couple of, I don't know, if you're going to take longer than a few minutes, just so it doesn't completely dry out, and you can even dampen the cloth. All right, so I want to let that sit. It doesn't need to rise. I just like to let it sit for a couple of minutes and then just, I'll show you how you separate it. All right, let me plate the salad. Okay, so it doesn't look any different, but it does make a difference, I promise. I really like the big chunks in there. I think it makes it look even more beautiful. So let me grab, I like to always plate it on something white. That way the red and the green really show. And it's surprisingly a filling salad because of the walnuts. And I like to pair it with lighter foods like the Jingalov, which is obviously just a flatbread. I'm going to plate it. All right, here we go. And the most important thing, arguably, of course, are the pomegranate seeds. So I put some on top just for that beautiful color. And they do really give a nice crunch, and they have a little bit of tang. So I do think it's actually nice in the recipe as well. But there's obviously the molasses. And then I always put on the corners. I'll show you at the end what the plate looks like. And every time I peel pomegranate, I'm somehow wearing white, so I do always get a stain on me, but I actually find the peeling is not that difficult. I think it seems more intimidating than it is, but just avoid wearing white, obviously. Don't live on the high road, I guess. There we go. So that's it. Maybe later I will zoom up, but I hope you can see the colors. Okay, I'm gonna put that aside, and then when everything's done, I'll plate it all together. Okay, so I have a portable stove. That's what I'm going to be using. The heat isn't as powerful as my stovetop, but generally speaking, all you need is medium. And the burner is actually smaller than the one I use, so it just might take a couple of minutes longer than it normally would. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to keep it here. That might be easiest. I'll turn it on once I roll out the dough. So this recipe makes about 8 breads. And I've done it where I've made them all and then frozen half of it. They freeze very well, they defrost well, so you can definitely do that if you don't want to force yourself to eat 8 breads. Okay. So, as I said, it makes 8 breads. So I'm sure there's a proper way to do this, but I'm just going to eyeball it. There's a saying in Armenian, so you just measure everything with your eyes. So I'm splitting it in half so that this should give me 4 Jingalov. So again, I'll do the exact same thing and split that in half. 2, and then 1 more. So I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, so that's gonna be 1 Jingalov. So I'll probably only make 1 just to make sure we have enough time to make the 3rd recipe, but if you want me to make another one, I'm happy to. I'm just letting you know. So I'll just kind of work it out a little bit again, and then use some flour to dust your surface. If you don't have a rolling pin, I've seen people use wine bottles to roll it out, so you can use whatever is around you. So I'll just kind of open it up a little bit in my hand, make sure both sides are coated, and now I'm going to roll it out. So in the end, Jingalov is going to look oval. I tend to kind of keep that in mind when I'm rolling it out. I tend to keep it into a rectangle or oval shape, but in the end, you can morph the shape quite easily. So you just want to do as thin as possible without ripping it. And there's no need to be a perfectionist here. If a couple holes come or if it's a little bit thicker, you just cook it a little bit longer. So don't worry about that. And I tend to always say, make the size as big as your pan can hold. Some people have larger pans. I'm going to do a little bit smaller just because, as I said, the burner is smaller, so it's going to cook slower. So flatten it out, and then where's my roll? And then I begin. Just like this. You can work the middle first, and then just push it out from every side, and then you'll see how it just thins out. Traditionally, it's made on a saucepan, And you can put a couple of those. They're like these huge oval things, and it's made outside. And you can put like 6 Jingalov patsus. They cook and they just kind of like almost fall off. I love seeing them in action. I've seen somebody take a wok pan and flip it over and put it over the stove and kind of mimic it. I'm just using a regular stove, but yeah, traditionally it's made with a saucepan, which is really a nice sight to see. Okay. So you can see it's not really in perfect shape, but that's okay. We're not perfectionists. I'm just going to spread it out as much as I can without tearing it. All right. Just a little bit more. Okay. This is workable. This is where I'm going to stuff it. I'm very generous with the stuffing. The recipe in the cookbook is just enough for every single bread to have like a thin layer of green that you still taste and enjoy. But when I'm making it for myself, I'll just add double the recipe of the greens and just stuff it to its full potential. I like when the greens are the thickest amount. Okay, so this is actually a good example because it's not a perfect shape. I can work a little bit longer to make it a little bit more oval, but it works, I promise you. So I'm going to turn on the burner. So usually it'd be about medium heat. You don't need oil. You can obviously put oil if you want to, but it's generally cooked with nothing. It's a dry heat. So I'm going to put it to medium, a little bit on the high side, just because that one takes longer. And okay. So now's the fun part. You get to stuff it. Give this one more good stir. And then, yep, I'll show you how much I put. Just about that much, but you can always see how many doughs you have left and then calculate it based on that. But this is the ideal amount to me where it's quite, I would say quite generous, and you'll definitely taste it. Just going to take the tissue so I don't get the greens all over the dough. And then
I checked the cord on your burner. The cord is a little close to that burner.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Wow, good eye.
Thanks to everyone watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're helping me not turn my house on fire, set my house on fire. So I hope you can see. So I'm going to start in the middle. Maybe I'll turn it a little bit over so I'll start in the middle, and you just secure it from there. That's the easiest. So I secure it, and then I just kind of go along the side, and I kind of go over on one side just to secure it. You can do just pinching it, but I like to kind of go over a little bit. That way the top is has like a little bit of a thicker line. It looks a little bit like a design, to be honest. So I'm just going over until you reach the end. Maybe I'll show what it looks like from there. You can see the side's not done yet. So I just continue it here. I'll go like this. I just don't like to get the greens on the dough. So just keep going. Okay, so one part was not secure. I'm just going to go over that. Okay. Now, this is optional. Doesn't always happen. But when I end up with these, we call them bocheks, like the tails that don't really have too much green in them, I just kind of rip them off. And that way I just make sure every bite has greens. You don't have to do that. And it doesn't always happen, to be honest. I think today I was just trying to make sure it was long. So same thing here. It's a bunch of empty dough. So I just remove the tails. And then you can see what it generally looks like. It's kind of like an oval. It looks like a little braid, isn't it? And then before you cook it, you can, some people, I've seen people go over with a rolling pin. I'm a little bit too chicken to do that. I feel like it will tear the design. So you just want to press it with your hands. There's bound to be a little bit of an opening. So you just press it with your hands to flatten it as much as possible. So I'm going to do that on both sides. You can see all the air that's in there. You can hear it coming out, so I know there's a good opening, which means I didn't technically do the best job, but that's good because you want a little bit of air to come out, so it shouldn't be that secure. I love the way the top looks. It does really look like a design. You can maybe get more creative with that too if you're a food stylist. So I'm just going to do that one more time, and then I'll put it on the stove. Okay, so it's on. I'll put this a little bit forward, maybe like that. So it's about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. On my typical stove top, as long as the pan is actually hot, it's going to be probably around 3 to 4 minutes. Here it probably will be the entire 5 minutes. and then you just flip it, cook it the exact same thing on the other side, and you'll know when it's cooked, it'll start getting light brown spots. You just don't want those to become black and burned. So I'm looking at the time just to be careful, 10:38, so I'm going to assume 10:41. I'll give it a look, but I'll probably leave it for 2 more minutes. So that's it, and yeah, we'll wait until it's cooked completely to enjoy it. What was I going to say? I had comments about the dough. Oh, I want to say something about the dough, but I just forgot what I was going to say. Well, anyways, I'll come to me, I'm sure. So we'll cook that for a little bit. Maybe while it's cooking, I could make the drink because there is time technically because we're just waiting for that. So Jingalov is always served. Are there questions? No. Jingalov is always cooked, served with either a dry red wine or a tun, which is a savory yogurt drink. And if it was in the evening, I of course recommend a glass of red wine, but it's most typically served with tun. So if you've never had it in Armenian cuisine, yogurt is kind of treated more in the savory side, so you have it with meals, and the yogurt we buy is tangy and sour rather than sweet or flavored. Obviously, you can have it in dessert too, but it's typically used with rice and things like that. And even on dolma, we tend to put it with garlic on the dolma. So in this case, this is a very popular drink in Armenia. It's always served during the summer. It's in a clay cup to keep it cool. And in my case, I'm vegan if you didn't know. I'm using a homemade soy yogurt, which I really like because of its high protein content. I make it the exact same way I would make typical yogurt. So it's the exact same process. So I'm just switching the milk essentially. So this is about half a cup, or maybe a little bit more actually, 2/3 of a cup, homemade soy yogurt. So it's nice and tangy and sour. And then, as I said, it's a savory drink, so do not judge me for the salt. Just know that this is part of the course. So you want to put a very generous amount of salt because it should be salty at the end. So honestly, I would even go with 1/4 of a teaspoon, like that. And then there's a restaurant in Armenia called Jingalov, and they literally only serve the bread and tun, this drink. They kind of want to make sure that no one goes against the course. So just stir those together. And then the water is completely dependent on the texture you prefer. So you could, or the texture, sorry, the consistency. You could thin it out or keep it a little bit thicker. I just like to make it so it's not so watery, so I actually taste the yogurt. So I would say usually go with equal parts both, like equal parts yogurt to water. You can kind of just gradually add it in and see the consistency you would want. It does give you that good white mustache if you want to do some jokes about the Got Milk commercial. So just stir that really well. And then normally I would use a lot of ice, but I'm not going to do that. So it's 10:41. I'm just going to check that I know it has more time. We'll put the heat just a little bit higher for today. Okay, that's all combined, and then it's completely optional, but you can decorate it. Sometimes you can put dried mint in there. You can put a cucumber on the side, or you can just decorate it with some fresh mint. So I can put that on the side. Let's see. Like that, just on the side. It gives a nice flavor to it, and you can even enjoy it as you're drinking the drink. So like that. So yeah, it can be thick or thin. It's completely up to you. So that's the drink. It's very simple. I made it with both soy yogurt and coconut yogurt. Both go really well as long as it's not like a vanilla flavor sweetened one. So now the last thing we're waiting for is Jingalov. Is there any more questions? Maybe while it's cooking, that's a good time.
I have a few questions. Someone wants to know what kind of flour you used.
I'm using standard all-purpose flour. That's actually a really good question because a friend of mine recently made it and they used, what's it called? It's the one that's pre-sifted. I think it's pastry, yeah, pastry and cake flour. You could use it, of course, but that one's sifted, so it's going to kind of fill the cup up sooner than you would with the standard flour. So in that case, definitely use more. But this is just regular all-purpose flour. I think I was specifically using 5 roses, if that helps.
And going back to the walnut and olive salad, how many people would that feed?
Well, it's kind of a side, so I'm thinking of a side portion. I would say about 4 people, like would have like a generous side. If you're doing more meze style, where everyone takes like a tablespoon, you could go up to 8 people, maybe 6, 8, something like that. But in this case, I would treat it more like just a side, so I would say 4 people.
Great. Can you tell us the best way to peel a pomegranate?
You know what? That's a good idea. I can do it, and I will definitely get my robe dirty for you all. I'll try to keep it as clean as possible, especially because once this flips, I still have, yeah, it's getting there very soon. All right, so This is the pomegranate. So you want to go with this side. I guess it's called the crown. And you just want to make like, well, I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways. Sorry, I shouldn't imply this is the best possible way. This is one of the many ways. So you just want to make like 4 deep cuts at the top. So I'll do it here and then show you. It's kind of like, I treat it like a hat. I'm making a hat for the pomegranate. I've seen methods where someone like dumps it in water and that way all the peel floats to the top and the seeds sink, but then you can still have to drain it. So I just keep it a little bit more simple. Did I cut this side? So 4 corners. And then you can kind of with the knife flip it a little bit. You'll see how it's just going to pop out. And then you can use the knife actually to like pop it out. Like that. It's like a little hat. You get a couple around you, so just like that. And then from each corner that you cut, you just go down. You'll lose a couple, that's why you just want to be a little bit careful. Just go down, it doesn't have to be so deep that you're crushing the pomegranates, just like that. And then if I had a separate bowl maybe, I could use this one. Let me just check my bread. Ooh, almost, maybe 30 more seconds or maybe even a whole minute. This is my old bowl. You just kind of like open it in the bowl each side, and I take one side at a time. So this is a 3, this is just 1. I'll then just open it like in the bowl, kind of stretching it out. A lot of the arrows will fall out that way. And that way you see the peel is just large chunks like this. So it's not that tedious. You just want to, there's 1 pomegranate, 1 arrow on that. I'll remove that and put the peel aside. And I just collect it. You see how it just falls apart like that? So I do that to every corner. I'll do obviously 1 at a time. And it's quite a lot of pomegranates. So you don't necessarily need to be doing it every day. And then just keep it in a Tupperware in the fridge. You can top foods with it. I just eat it with a spoon most of the time. A fun little fact is, as I said, it's very common in both Armenia and the diaspora. You'll find its imagery everywhere. It's almost like cliche at this point. And one thing in the diaspora that's like a big tradition, and we actually did it in my family, when someone opens a new business, because it kind of represents prosperity and good fortune, you would take a pomegranate and smash it on their business. Not like you wouldn't throw it, you wouldn't make a huge mess, you kind of just crack it on the wall, and that way you're kind of ensuring that the person's going to have good fortune and prosperity, because again, from one thing comes a lot. So I hope that helped a little bit. I don't know how much you can see, but yeah, you can see a lot of them are out, and I just keep stretching the peel and kind of moving them with my finger. I find usually these big peels just stay put, and if there's anything, if they're big enough that you can see it, just remove it. So to me, that's the simplest way. As I said, there's a water method. You can do that and see if they float. I think that was the goal. The peels float, but yeah, almost done. See, mostly done. I don't waste any though. I learned from the movie Ararat. There's a scene with Charles Aznavour. He refuses to leave even 1 arrow behind because he said it's bad luck. So you want to find all of them and every single one. In his case, he's like, they all have to be in my stomach. All right, I made a little bit of a mess. Let me just move everything here. All right, let me see how the Jingalov pots is doing. I think we can flip it soon. Oh yeah, it's getting nice and brown. I'm just gonna lift it. It's getting the light brown spots. It could go a little bit darker, but I'm just gonna flip it because this is already okay. But usually there's like a little bit more pronounced brown. I'm just gonna flip it on that side. I'll probably cook a little bit faster just because of the heat. I raised the temperature a little bit. So let's give it 3 minutes and then I'll plate it. But yeah, if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer now.
Is there a certain type of olive that you used in the salad? Does it matter?
What was it?
The type of olive that you used in the salad?
Oh, just it's a green olive. I tend to buy them in large jars and they're not pitted, so I'll actually pit them. But you can buy, as long as it's green, you can buy any kind. You can buy them pre-pitted, you can buy them pre-sliced. And it doesn't really matter actually. I was going to say to avoid when they're stuffed with the red, but it doesn't matter. That's fine in there too. So just a standard green olive, and you can buy them sliced if that makes it easier too.
Great. And someone wanted to check, was there any oil in that pan?
In this pan, no, it's a dry heat. It's typically cooked on the sauce pan, so it's completely dry. So we're just mimicking it the best we can in Canada. I don't have a sauce pan here, and it's usually cold outside, so I'm not really going to invest in one. But yeah, usually it's a dry heat. But if you want, you can put a little bit of oil. It gets quite crispy, to be honest, like without the oil, because the bread is so thin. But if you want to add some, of course, go for it. You can definitely experiment. What I've been taught, essentially almost like a recipe-less dish. So feel free to add your own touch, add your own greens to it.
Great. Someone says their mother used to sprinkle sumac on top. Is that common?
On the Jingalov hats?
I believe so.
Oh, that's such a good idea. I love sumac because of that tangy sour flavor. I haven't seen it. I've seen usually when it's served in a restaurant, it comes with like a red pepper and even a black pepper, so you can put it on top, but that's a great idea. I would love to eat that. I actually have some sumac, so maybe I'll copy that today. Almost.
Someone wants to know, could you use a large rectangular griddle and do many of them at the same time?
That's a much better idea. If I had one, that's what I would be doing. And that way, I guess you could put them lengthwise like this and probably fit 3 or 4. And I like that better because with this, I mean, in this case, I'm using a portable. On my actual stove, I could use a larger pot. The tails would actually sit all the way down. So if you have the rectangle girdle kind, that's 10 times better. Did I say girdle? Almost. Ooh. All right. Maybe I'll peel the other half of this pomegranate over. It's probably just another minute or so. So just again, opening it in the middle like that.
We actually have 2 more questions about the bread.
Okay.
Why the stovetop instead of in the oven? Or could you do in the oven?
Yeah, you could do it in the oven. It'll take a little bit longer. I think I didn't include that method in the cookbook. I forget why. Oh, because I already felt like I was doing it against tradition by not using sauge. So I just tried to stick to the closest thing possible, but you can definitely do it in the oven. And in the oven, you can even lightly brush it with some oil, which will give it a little bit of that crispiness. So yeah, definitely just probably cook it a little bit longer.
And the next question is, would you serve this hot or would you also serve it at room temperature?
Both, yeah. So when I have it in a restaurant, I'm trying to think, it's definitely come piping hot where you have to wait because the greens are so hot inside. So you could do both, but I wouldn't serve it cold, but room temperature is also fine. So that's why you could make them in advance and then you can just lightly heat them up in a toaster oven, or you can just serve them as long as they're not cold. It works either way. It doesn't have to be piping hot or anything. It's actually not ideal because it will really burn because the greens are so hot.
And if you were going to freeze this recipe, would you do it raw or after you've cooked it?
I would cook it first. I've done that before because I forget when I was making it for someone, and then I think I had too many extras. And I love Jingalov huts, but it's not necessarily something I'm going to eat every single day. So I froze about 6, and they were all cooked. And then I let them defrost for a little bit on the counter, and then just heated them up in the toaster oven. It was perfectly fine.
And someone wants to know if you'd ever write another cookbook.
Yes, I'm actually working on another one. It's a little bit different than this. I'll announce it a little bit later just because do you guys know the saying of you don't count your eggs until they're hatched? So I believe until certain wheels are moving, I won't really announce what it is, but I am definitely working on something. It's very exciting. It's somewhat connected to this book, but also takes a direction where this book couldn't go. So I'm very excited to be working on that, and I'll keep you updated. It's going to be on the website. I'll be on my Instagram, but yeah, thank you for asking.
Great.
All right, I think it's almost done because it all even smells done, but as you can see, I didn't get one peel in there and I've got almost all of them. So I like this method personally. Okay. Let's move this on the side. Ooh, it almost fell. Can you flip that over? All right. So I could get the salad and just get everything plated. The salad. I'm going to use this flat blue plate. All right. So as I said, it's more of a side, so I would treat it like that. Just to the Jingalov hats to complement it. I really find these two complement each other really well. So just like that. I'll put a couple more pomegranates, why not? See how nice the colors look. And then the Jingalov huts, I've had it served where it just comes to you as the oval. It can come to you rolled up, which is always interesting. That's when it's done in like a restaurant. It's so thin that they can roll it up, and they cut it in half so you can see all the greens in a swirl. And another method is simply stacking it. So you take it, you cut it in half, and you stack it. So you can kind of get an idea of the brown spots, hopefully. I know there's a glare. I don't really know what to do. I hope you can see the brown. Like that. It can go a little bit darker too, but as I said, I'm just being careful. Mine actually kind of, when I flipped it over too much, it has a little bit of a cut, but it's okay. So I'm just going to cut this in half so I can stack it. You can see the insides. I'm pretty generous, so that's what I like to see, like a nice thick layer of greens. I don't know if you can see the steam coming out, so I would actually wait a little bit before serving that. And then take the other half, put it on the side, and where's my tongue? So the tongue, let's get that out. And we have a full meal. All right, so the Jingalov huts, the salad, and what we should drink with it. If it's the evening, feel free to have the dry red wine instead. But for now, ton is probably the best fit. So there we go.
That looks wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, we have several requests for you to tell us a little bit more about your time in Armenia.
Oh, sure. So I went in 2011. I initially went with an intention to return after 3 months. I was going with Birthright Armenia to volunteer. About a month and a half in, I just realized I had so much more to do and see, and I didn't realize at the time that staying open-ended would lead to almost 6 full years in Armenia. I would come back for the summers in Canada. So I stayed there for 6 years. I was volunteering for the first year, not all of it, about 9 months of it. And then I switched to working, and that was where I first started getting into writing. I would write about travel. I love Armenia as a travel spot. I love it for the culture. I love it for the people and the cuisine. So for me, I would write about articles, going throughout Armenia, even to neighboring countries like Georgia. And I started writing about food. I'm a nutritionist, so not a dietitian, but a nutritionist. So I've also write about veganism in Armenia, the nutritional aspects of it. And I also started keeping a blog, like a nutrition and travel one. So I really enjoyed my time there. And I ended up staying and working there for 6 years. I started Vegan Armenian Kitchen, where I would kind of showcase some of the naturally plant-based, like the Lenten recipes, as well as veganized. So there's some classics in the book, like mantabur, which I veganized, so it's traditionally made with meat. But the majority of it are Lenten dishes, a lot of which exist in the diaspora as well as Armenia. So when I came back to Canada, I just had all these ideas to work on, and it started out as the website, and then it slowly evolved into the book.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lena. All of us here at Oldways, we were so excited that you were joining us today. And I think we all learned so much. We just want to remind everyone who's watching that if you're looking for these recipes, check your email. They're going to be a link will be sent to all of you where you can find the full instructions on the Oldways website. And if you want to watch parts of the demo again or share it with someone else, please go to YouTube and search Oldways. Later this week, we'll make the full demo available. And while you're there, you can look around and explore other demos and recipes. And we can't wait to add these to our collection. Lena, thank you so much for taking the time to teach us today and share your wonderful recipes with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'll turn it over to Barbara to wrap up our demo.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Lena, thank you so very much. How absolutely wonderful this was. If we were all together in one room, I can guarantee you there would be a rousing applause. Just watching the comments of gratitude and excitement and joy was also wonderful. So we all thank you very, very much. How delighted also that we are in the Armenian Museum and New Paths are connecting us all together in this very special way today. So our thanks to them as well. We're so excited about this virtual cooking series, a collaboration of the City of Boston, Age Friendly, Oldways, and Friends of Armenian Heritage Park that is keeping us virtually connected during these unusual times. And Lena, this morning we felt all connected in just such a warm and wonderful way. And we look forward to welcoming you and all of you to the park when we greet one another. So we'll bring you down from Canada so we can all meet you in person and extend our thanks and appreciation in person. Again, to each of you, thank you for joining us. We're delighted to have shared this wonderful occasion. And I have to tell you, there was another program most recently on Italian Sicilian cooking that was also presented by an extraordinary woman, Catherine Katz, who joined us this morning. So Catherine, so wonderful that you were with us and so many others. So see you soon. Take care of yourself. Join us for our next program, which is on September 23rd, featuring Andrew Janjigian, who is the bread expert with America's Test Kitchen and editor of Cooks Illustrated. So enjoy this lovely day, which is certainly off to a wonderful start. Enjoy, everybody. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Lena.